Ladies and gentlemen, in today's module, we are getting into something that you would think would be a great source of enjoyment and excitement for most agency owners. Yet, most of the time, it has most agency owners pulling their hair out. And that is the topic of getting paid. Because a lot of these 1.0 and 2.0 agencies that I've referred to, in phase one of this program, they are still living in 2008 when it comes to invoicing. And because they're stuck in the past, they are dealing with mind-numbing issues. They are taking away focus from running their agency because they don't know how to get paid properly and how to frame it properly. So in today's module, I'm going to show you guys how to get paid, something that you would think would be relatively easy, but actually takes a little bit more thought and consideration than you would first assume. So with no further ado, let's get straight into it. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, in today's module, we are going to talk about getting paid. Now, in today's teaching, we are going to talk about why accounts receivables will cripple you, the reason auto billing clients is a non-negotiable, setting up bank and payment processors, how to send invoices and create subscriptions, how to navigate issues with client billing, pitfalls to watch out for, and how to also bill performance deals. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the stress of receiving payment. So as I said, you would think that getting paid would be this very exciting thing for most agency owners. Yet, for most agency owners, it has them on the edge of their seat. It has them second guessing themselves constantly because the thing you need to understand is that a client is only a client when they've paid the invoice. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you've gone a verbal yes, and to be honest, it doesn't even matter if they've signed the contract. Until they have paid that invoice, they're not a client of yours. So as I said, these 1.0 and 2.0 agencies, they celebrate a yes from have to follow up, and they've got accounts receivable, and maybe the client is plays nice and squares away that first invoice or that second invoice. And I definitely know what that's like. I remember in 2017, one of my older business friends was very generous, invited me to the south of France to his house, and it was a beautiful holiday. I was his guest, and I was meant to enjoy my time there. Instead, I spent 7 days thinking about this unpaid invoice that was 4 weeks unpaid from my client. And I thought, okay, what does this mean? Does this mean that they're not going to pay me? And then also, going forward, like, are they no longer a client of mine? And granted, these guys, and it's 3 business owners, I think they were just on their summer holiday enjoying themselves. They just didn't get around to it, et cetera, et cetera. So as I said, it literally took away joy and happiness from my trip. Now, us being, evolved 3.0 agency owners, we get paid on day one, and we don't start work until we get paid. And not only that, that is like a non-negotiable. Okay, that is whether they have to do it via bank wire, whether they have to do it Stripe and auto billing and setting a subscription. But if you set up a subscription in Agency Flow, which I'll show you how to do in a second, and unfortunately they just have to pay via bank wire for one of a myriad of different reasons, so be it. Right? These things can't always go 100% to plan, right? With some clients, it will be a little bit scrappier. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing that protects you is you're never going to do the work until they pay the invoice. They pay the invoice ahead of time, okay? But in an ideal scenario, they pay the invoice, obviously, from the day in which they agree, sign contracts, et cetera, et cetera. And not only that, you have their card on file and you've got an auto billing set up within Agency Flow that's connected to Stripe. Now, if you're wondering why do we actually need to auto bill our clients, surely we can just send the invoice and, either them or maybe they have a finance department or accounting department, the accountant will just take care of it. You might be wondering, why do we actually need to auto bill our clients? Well, it's very simple, and this wallpaper is available for download right below this video. Every recall is a reframe. You see, the less negative experiences your client associate to their time with you, regardless of the results you got them, the better. And that's a funny thing. You could have had an incredible time with your clients and you could have gotten them incredible results. But if they have a negative image or they have negative memories in their mind, and by the way, negative is you having to follow up, 5 or 6 times to get an invoice settled because, maybe they are busy, right? Happens to business owners, right? Maybe they're stressed. Maybe they're backlogged with their email. They just came. Now in your mind, they've got these references of, negative emotions they felt working with you. And even if you get them incredible results, I'm telling you, I've been running my agency for 5 years, actually, as of this month. And I know it cripples relationships. Billing versus manual billing. Because here's the thing with auto billing, there's this gym that I actually am still like a member of. It's $100 a month. I'm actually a member of 3 gyms, like 2 I actually use One, I don't, and I haven't used in a year and a half. And this is the gym closest to where I used to live, like my last place. And it's been 18 months and I still haven't canceled my subscription. I mean, I know I'm an idiot. I'm a dummy. I really need to get to it. But that's a perfect example right there of something that I don't use, but because it comes out of my account every month, I'm like, whatever, I'll get to it, right? And then we look at that compared to something I actually use, which is my personal trainer, every single day. But I have to manually log into my bank account, send the money at the end of the month, and not, I love my PT to bits, and I would, never stop working with him. Well, actually, unfortunately, I'm moving to a different country, so I guess I have to. But if it wasn't for that, I'd never stop working with him. But every time I pay the invoice, I'm like, oh, do I need a PT? There are these little whispers going on in my mind. I'm like, do I need a PT? Like, maybe I could do it myself. Where else could I spend this money? Like, is in terms of like, and it's so funny, right? Because I've literally got $100 coming out of my fucking account from something that I don't use every single month. And I barely ever think about that. And then this thing, which I actually use because I have to manually do it, is that every recall, every time you think about something, you have these micro reframes, right? And that can be a positive reframe or a negative reframe. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, that is known as your reticular activation system. It's basically your selective focus. And the issue is, and this is why, when you start, something small, like bad about a person, then it can spiral very quickly. Or when you know something good about a person, that can spiral, it can go either really negative or really positive. But I will say most of the time when your reticular activation system switches and you start to see the bad in a person or a situation or a thing, then it starts to spiral more than, when you see something small that's good. So as I said, you could be a fucking amazing service provider. The results could be insane. But if you plant that little seed, right? And as I said, even if you're doing incredible and they're happy to pay you, that manual aspect of it does trigger something for them. So as I said, in terms of why we auto bill, the first reason is less reframes and less risk. We're de-risking ourselves from them having a micro, having a recall. As that a recall is every time something comes into your consciousness, and then using that as a stepping stone to then reframe the entire relationship together. And as I said, even if you're doing incredible, it doesn't matter, because you need to understand that, we're in the service-based business, right? Like, we have relationships with our clients, and money can ruin relationships. Okay. So you almost want them to forget that they're even having to pay for the service, right? That really is, you almost want them to think that this is some small little software, they don't need to worry about, because finally, and this is the last reason that we auto bill, is the first two things, the reframing and, the fact that can lead to relationship, the client service provider relationship being ruined, that will lead to the final thing, which is stress. And as I said, I used to, in 2016, 2017, up until mid 2018, I had so much stress about clients fucking paying the invoice. And, what does this mean if they're even 4 days late? Who knows? They could just be 4 days late to pay. Like, 101 different things could have come up. But now you start to get in your head, okay, what does this mean about like our working relationship? Maybe they don't want to renew next month and this and that. And let me give you, as I said, because there will be certain situations where you genuinely, a client just has to bank wire you. And that's just a situation, right? And that doesn't mean don't work with those clients, because, I have those clients, and I'll talk about, some examples later on in this module of ones where I've had to have compassion towards that. But the biggest and best thing that you're doing for yourself, which I didn't do before, is, the way that I used to structure things is I would do the work, and then at the end of 30 days, I would send the invoice. Now they have all the leverage. I've done all the work, and, they're the ones who are paying the invoice. Now in this situation, if there is a bank wire client, and they don't send the bank wire, then we stop working. Maybe we'll give a 7-day grace period, maybe 10 days, right? After that, let's say they pay the first invoice and then they're 7 days late or 10 days late. After 10 days, 7 days, that's it. Like, we're not going to fucking do the work until you pay the invoice, right? So you kind of reclaim that power back, because as I said, it's not always going to be this ideal, perfect situation where, it's auto billing, they can use Stripe and, there's no issues and their card never, sometimes billing is scrappy. Okay. So it's not always going to be that perfect situation, but you just need to make sure that the power, you got some power in that relationship, and you have something you can actually step away. And as I said, now you have some bargaining power in that dynamic. So ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about actually getting paid. Now let's talk about how to actually get paid step by step. Now bear in mind, this is a summary. The full step-by-step written GIFs, photos, etc. I'll go ahead and drop that down below in the plug and play, like super technical step-by-step. So, don't worry, don't need to take notes here or anything like that. Another thing to bear in mind is Tristan will actually throw up some screen recordings of these various different banks, payment processors, etc., just so you can get a bit of a visual idea, but everything is in the plug and play. Now, the first step is to get a bank account sorted. Now, you can choose whichever one you want, HSBC, Business, Barclays. And the other thing to bear in mind is you don't need a business card, right, if you're not actually registering as a business. And we've talked about this, or actually, I'll put it before this module, the tax, finance, accounting module. So depending on whether you decide to go for a limited structure or whether you decided to go for a sole trader structure, and I've kind of run you through those options already. Depending on that, you'll either have a business card, right, or a personal card. So, you'll either have a HSBC business, Barclays business, or a Barclays personal, or whatever bank, Santander, like whatever the hell you use, right? You can use any of these sort of high street banks, NatWest, whatever you want, right? Whatever you have, Wells Fargo, I'm pretty sure they have one. Chase, right? Whatever it is you want to use, right? Or, and as I said, I can only speak to the UK. If you want, a lot of these online banks can get you set up literally in the space of a day, like literally in the space of an hour. It's insane, right? So we're talking banks like Revolut, banks like Starling, banks like Monzo. And as I said, especially if you don't have a registered business, if you're just wanting two separate bank accounts, one for your personal, like as in like one for just your personal groceries, day-to-day expenses, and another one for, softwares for, really just to separate the two. It's not really, you've decided you're not at the stage where it makes sense to have a business. You just want to separate your expenses. So you kind of have clear line items. As I said, all you do is just go ahead and if you're already with a bank, like let's say Barclays, just go ahead and ask them to open you up another account. It's super simple. It takes basically no time. And then they'll give you a separate card. So as I said, you also want to make sure you have two cards, whether that's two personal ones, and one of the personal ones is kind of acting like the one for all of your business expenses as a sole trader, or you literally have a personal card and then a business card. So as I said, whether you go for a high street bank or an online bank, it really doesn't matter. Do whatever you want to do. Now, another thing to bear in mind is if you're under the age of 18, it should not be an issue. I had a Barclays personal card from the age of 14, I believe. And when I was 17 and actually created my business, I just had two personal Barclays cards. One, I just had all my personal expenses on. Another one was strictly for business expenses, even though I was still a sole trader and didn't legally have a business. And that's because, it was a lot simpler, as I said, to just kind of, separate the two expenses in that way. So with literally 99% of banks, it's not an issue. You can create a bank account before the age of 18. If you're in this weird 1%, literally not even 1%, like 0.5% audience where for some reason you can't create a bank account under the age of 18, then try to figure out some sort of arrangement with your parents, maybe an older friend, a brother or sister, get resourceful. But I've basically honestly never seen an example where someone under the age of 18 literally can't make a bank account and this becomes an issue, et cetera, et cetera. Now, once you have your bank account and your card, right, you should be able to set up within 5 days, whether that's, as I said, a Main Street bank or an online bank. Now you can proceed with setting up a Stripe account. Now, Stripe is the payment processor of choice. Now, they take anywhere from a 1.4% to 2.9% fee on every transaction. And it takes between 2 to 10 days to actually get sent to your bank account. Now, if you're in the US, the UK, it's all like 2 days, 2 working days. And then I think maybe a few countries as well, they're really speeding up their processes. But in some countries, I know it is at 10 days, but still, nonetheless. Now, I know you might be going, hey, why would I give Stripe 1.4 to 2.9% of every transaction? But trust me, it is worth it. The fact that you can auto bill your client, Stripe is so seamless, so clean. And obviously Stripe, integrates directly with Agency Flow. Trust me, you're going to want to use it. And I think Stripe is supported in 30 countries. I got Tristan to throw up all of them here. And they're always adding new countries to the mix. So 2 other things to bear in mind is Stripe does allow minors, people who are under 18 to join the account. In fact, I had mine for many, many months. And then one day they reached out and they're like, hey, we noticed you're below the age of 18. Could we get written consent from your mother? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I just got my mom to email in from her account. Well, funnily enough, I don't think my mom even knows this. I had the email to her. I had the password to her email. So I literally just went on her email and just sent an email on my behalf. Yeah, anyways. Point is, it was just as simple as that. And, I've been using Stripe for 4 years ever since, super chill. Another thing to bear in mind is that you can also use Stripe as a sole trader, right? Sole proprietor. You don't need to be a registered business in order to use Stripe. Now, a few alternatives to Stripe. Square is a big one. Now, for the most part, Square is available in all the countries that Stripe is available in. It's just more if for some reason you just don't want to use Stripe, although I do believe Stripe is a far superior alternative. The next one is Go Cardless. Now, this is mainly a UK option. Once again, as I said, if you don't want to use Stripe for whatever reason, it's another one that you can look at. Next up, we have PayPal. Now, PayPal, in my opinion, is just a horrendous service. It's terrible, but it's just available in so many different countries. So, as a last resort, if you need to use PayPal, do what you got to do. And we're also going to be adding a PayPal API integration into Agency Flow. So by the time you're watching this, it may already be there, right? So you can accept payments using Agency Flow with both Stripe and PayPal. And then obviously with Bankwire as well. You can just do that and mark it as paid, etc., etc. Anyways, PayPal, it's constantly got like annoyances, extra paperwork, this, that. So really, as a last resort, if you have to use PayPal, then use PayPal. One other thing that I want to mention here is, and I'll get Justin to throw up some B-roll, I'm sure Stripe has some official, like, cool looking video about it, is Atlas. Now, Stripe Atlas is where they will actually, doesn't matter what country you're in, they actually help you set up a account. I believe it's in America. So actually help you set up an LLC in America. And by the way, anyone from any country can do that. That's not an issue. In fact, my new tax structure, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but my tax structure is I actually have a Dubai holding company, or at least the one that I'm moving to in like the next 30 days, that actually owns 3 American LLCs for three different companies, and then 1 UK limited company. Anyways, the reason I tell you this is because I'm a British passport holder who lives in Dubai, but then has a Dubai holding company, but owns all these American LLCs. So the reason I say that is because anyone from anywhere, to my knowledge, can create an LLC. And Stripe actually, and I'm pretty sure it's, and I'll drop more information in the plug and play. This is actually just one that came up to me on the top of my head. I'm pretty sure it's America. Stripe will actually help you, and and they do take a fee for this, but it's very fair, just like all of Stripe's pricing model. And they'll actually help you create an American LLC, and then that can get distributed to like your local bank, whatever country you live in. So yeah, that's another option I thought I'd just mention to you is Stripe Atlas. Now, once you've gone ahead and set up your Stripe, which once again should only take you anywhere from honestly an hour all the way to a day, depending on where you are in the world and how much complexity there is to it. Next, once you have your bank account, right? You've got your bank account, because whenever you get paid in Stripe, that's going to get sent out to your bank. Now, in front of Stripe, and the forward-facing thing. Now, Stripe can still technically send invoices. It's just horrific, right? Like, I don't know why Stripe makes it so bad, but then again, I guess it's a payment processor and it does that so well. It's not really great at creating customers and creating subscriptions and like sending one-time invoices. Like, that's really not what it's built for. So in front of Stripe, that's a payment processor that actually processes the payments from a person's debit card, credit card. And as I said, that gets distributed to a bank, you're either personal or business, depending on the way you've structured it. Now, in front of that is Agency Flow, right? Because Agency Flow actually is something that you would be really excited to send to your clients. It's a beautiful, beautiful invoice that you can curate the way that you would like. Now, the Stripe API, and as I said, later we want to add some function for like Square, GoCardless, PayPal, some of these other processors, but at the time of recording this, it's just Stripe. And as I said, we've got some more coming very, very soon. In front of that is Agency Flow, and this is where you can manage all of your clients, your subscriptions. Is it one time? Is it recurring? Add whatever notes, customize, make your invoice look super pretty. And as I said, another thing to bear in mind is if you send this to a client and they can't pay with Stripe or pay with card for whatever reason, you can still send it to them as an invoice. They can also download it on their side as an invoice, for accounting purposes and stuff like that. But you can send it to them as an invoice and they can pay it. They can tell you that they've paid, and you can actually mark it as paid. And that subscription thing still works. So the next month, you don't need to then manually send another invoice, even if they're paying for it manually. So that subscription aspect of it still works regardless. And, the invoice number goes up and everything is just congregated properly. And as I said, even if the client is paying manually, it's still nice that you've got that auto billing on, because you don't need to worry every single month. Oh, have I sent the invoice for the month coming up yet? How many days are left? It just does it all automatically for you. So right now I'm actually going to show you how to connect Agency Flow's API to Stripe, and also really just give you a bit of kind of a click around and a look inside of Agency Flow. But as I said, the step-by-step, click this button, that button, etc., that's all in the plug and play right below this video. So ladies and gentlemen, in the invoices section right here, you're going to go down to settings and you're actually going to connect your Stripe. Now I've gone ahead and done this already, but it's going to prompt you. In fact, there's usually a blue bar right here that asks you to hook up your payment processor. Now you can see right here inside of invoice default settings, invoice from. Now your agency, if you just leave this blank, it's just going to leave your agency name. But let's say, I don't know, you want it to change it or you rebrand it or whatever, right? You just want something different. Then you can actually go here, invoice from, and then it will actually change who the invoice is from. As I said, For me, I just already have it set to my agency name. So as I said, if you leave a blank, then it'll just set your agency name like that. Invoice number, because it's the first invoice, I just leave it at, 1001. But maybe you want a specific number, etc., etc. Here you select your default currency. For me, I have it set to United Kingdom. All right, mine will be British pound then. Yes, sterling. Then you've got discount, tax name, tax value. You can also set this information later on for each individual invoice. Here in the invoice notes, I actually recommend that you put in all of your bank details. So here I always have my business name, like for me, my actual company name. Then I have my IBAN number, SWIFT code, and then I've got my account number and sort code. So I have all the information that would be needed for an international bank, and then also my registered business address. So I have all the information that would be needed in order if this client can't do a Stripe payment for whatever reason, can't pay with debit card or credit card, then they can actually go ahead and just do a bank transfer, and all my bank details are there, or even local transfer. So here you'll find your reports, and obviously this will build up over time. Here you'll have your clients. Obviously, at the moment I haven't sent one invoice. Same thing with subscriptions, summary, etc., etc. So you can see right here, at first you're going to select single invoice or retainer. So as I said, ladies and gentlemen, so you can see right here, client is Greency, demo greency.com. Invoice from, so you can also set this directly here. So as I said, you can change this if, let's say, you've got two agencies, right? You can even, well, I guess, in that case, maybe it would make more sense to have, two agency, you'd probably have two agency flow accounts for the two separate agencies, but whatever. Point is, you can just change the invoice from. Here you've got your interval. Is it daily? You're sending a daily invoice, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly. Now, for most of us, it'll be monthly. So let's say, we're starting today. I signed the client today. So it'll be 16th, and then end date if it's just ongoing, right? So obviously, let's say you have a 90-day agreement, and then from there, it's rolling month by month, and you're just going to leave this end date empty. If you guys have said, hey, this is literally just 6 months, 100%, or let's say it's a funnel build and you split it up into two payments, one today and one in a month, then you'll go ahead and send that end date, or you'll go ahead and place an end date. Then for service subscription, let's just say paid traffic services, quantity, one, price, we're gonna go ahead and put in 5,800 pounds total. You can see right there. Here you'll put in your discount or your sales tax. So let's say, for example, I was sending an invoice to a UK client, then there is gonna be 20% VAT, which will be applied. Right? But in this case, let's not go ahead and add that. So here you'll put in your company name, your IBAN, as I said, your address. Now, as I said, there's a few more other things that I recommend outside of that, but company name, IBAN, Swift BIC, which is your Swift number, your sort code, and your account number. And then here as well, you can add your logo. So I haven't done that this time, but you can go ahead and I strongly recommend you do add your logo. So actually, let me go ahead and do that. So you can see right here, I put in my IG Media logo. It needs to be kind of like favicon, sort of like a square cutout of it. But we'll go ahead and put in a function later so you can kind of put a wide logo as well. So as I said, when it comes to end date, you can just go ahead and leave it blank, and then that basically just means it'll keep going. But let's say whatever, we just did we know for a fact it'll be a 3-month agreement. So that takes us to, 16th of November, if I'm not being a dummy. Yeah. So with all that information being said, we're going to go ahead and create a subscription. So now that we've created a subscription, you can actually see right here, we have our active subscription. We've got a summary. You can see that's been sent but not opened. And yeah, it's also a new client has been created. So that's pretty much about it. So as I said, ladies and gentlemen, all the additional information will be available in the plug and play down below. All the, specifically what button to click and this and that. Now comes the question of, what if the client doesn't want to pay the invoice via card? Well, the first thing you need to do is just give them gentle clarification. Hey, you can actually use a credit card, you can use a debit card, whatever, any card that you would just pay for a software with, that you would order something on Amazon, any of those work. And a lot of times it's funny, clients don't actually realize that they can pay with either debit or credit card. So that clarifies things a lot of the time. Then if they're like, oh, I don't know if I feel comfortable with having my card on file, you go, well, first of all, I have zero access to your details. I'm not taking your card number down or anything like that. It's actually Stripe, the biggest payment processor on earth. The invoicing software, it actually hooks up to that. So it's actually stored in Stripe system. And I actually have to pay Stripe a 3% fee in order to process that transaction. Now, for me, and by the way, this is actually what you're saying to the client, and go, but John, I don't mind paying that 3% because for me, I don't want us to have to deal with billing this and this and that. And at any moment that we decide to stop working together, your subscription will be ended. And you tell them, and furthermore, you have 2 lines of protection. You have Stripe as well as your credit card company or your debit card company. So you're all covered on that end. And the reason that I'm fine paying 3% is because I want to focus on getting you incredible results, the results that we just talked about and the results that you're so excited that you want to move forward with. So why would we want to have to worry about, flimsy invoices, spending a couple of days, me having to remind you and nag you. So the reason that I take that 3% hit with every single client is just so I can focus on what's most important, which is getting you results. So, that's really where you have to state to the client, if they actually can pay with their credit card or debit card, why it's in their best interest for them to do it. Now, the only other scenario where a client doesn't pay with credit or debit card or use Stripe is if they're in a situation, and I've experienced this a lot in both Italy and Germany, like Italian clients and German clients, is they have some weird credit limits, but then in my mind, I'm almost like, I swear you have debit cards. But look, I've just found it to be an issue sometimes with international clients. So I used to be like, has to be this, that. And I will say with British clients or for example, American clients, I've never, but for some reason, just specifically Germany, Italy are 2 that I've noticed that, I just can't get them to pay because of some weird bank limits and this and that. So, that's just the way that, things have gone. But for me, I'm still sending them automated invoices and automated subscriptions via agency flow. So, that for me, I don't have to constantly think, when do I need to send an invoice? Am I late? When is it? Blah, blah. I know it gets sent, right? I also know whether they've seen it, whether they've opened it, et cetera, et cetera. And I can also mark it as paid once they've done. So that way they've got the invoice, they can download it. It shows that it's been paid, et cetera, et cetera. So I think over the years, that's something that I've had to learn. And as I said, because of the way that I structure it now, where we pay, they pay, and then I do the 30 days of fulfillment that they've just paid for, the power is still in my hands. If they're 7 days late to paying 10 days, maybe we'll push it to 10. We're going to stop working, right? So at least the power is in your hands because of the way that, because of the way that the payment structure is. The last thing to understand is Stripe decline codes. So the biggest one that you're going to get on Stripe, because if you get a failed payment on Stripe, like if a client tries to pay and it just won't go through, their bank won't push it through, is you'll get something called do not honor. And you can actually kind of hover over the failed payment and it'll tell you. So if you hover over and it says insufficient funds, that's a little worrying. That means they don't have enough money in their account. Do not honor basically means it's a bank decline. And I've literally stayed on calls with clients for 30 minutes while they're calling the bank. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I'll just mute myself. Just call your bank. We'll get it squared away. Now, for example, my bank or, Amex, I don't really ever use my bank for payment stuff, but like my bank or Amex, they're really good. They just text me, was this you? Press yes. And I just type in yes. And they put the payment through, right? But some banks are super annoying. So as I said, I've had clients literally have to I've waited online as clients have called their bank to get a payment sorted, right? Because if, they're there and they're ready to go, then, let's make it happen. So that's another important thing that I would say is just really understanding Stripe codes. Now, the last thing that I want to touch on, and this will also be put in the plug and play, is a performance billing schedule. Now, what happens when we have a performance client? Let's say it's like a 1,600, small 1,600 pound a month base fee, and then we make our money from performance. So let's say there's a performance client, right? So we have a base fee, right? So we charge the base fee, and then we're making the rest of our money from performance. I will charge that base fee on the first day for the next rolling 30 days, and then 30 days later, they'll get billed again for the next following 30 days of work, right? And I'll actually get Tristan to put up a timeline. Let's say the timeline is, it would be what, 80 days? Yeah, 80 days. So Tristan, 80-day timeline, please. So on day 1, they're gonna pay month 1 retainer. On day 30, and by the way, it may be shorter or less, but you kind of get the general gist. On day 30, they're gonna pay month 2 retainer. Then on day, let's say 40, now usually it's actually a week after the second month billing rolls around, we'll actually bill the performance from the first month, okay? Because we leave an extra 7 days, 10 days, just so we get, any attribution that comes in and any conversions that come in after that window that we still get attributed for. So day 40, we're gonna charge performance fee for month 1. Then when it comes to day 60, we're actually gonna charge month 3 retainer, okay? Then actually, Tristan, I was wrong, not 80 days, 70 days. And then on day 70, we're actually gonna charge month 2, so that would be day 30 to day 60 performance fee. Because as I said, we've waited until that next 30-day period is up, and then we wait an extra 10 days for, you know, any of those conversions to come through, and then we're going to charge it like that. Okay, so it's pretty simple. You know, day one, we are billing for day 1 to day 30. And then, you know, in that period, that performance fee, we charge from anywhere from 7 to 10 days after that first month retainer for that month, you know, as in our performance fee for that period. So, you know, that's a little bit of clarity on how we do things. Now, all of this information, including all the agency flow stuff, where to click, this is that, will be down in the plug and play below. And on that note, let's get into today's action step. So for today's action step, open up the getting paid plug and play, follow all the instructions to set up your accounts, plus get agency flow dialed in and really just set up the right way. So ladies and gentlemen, now you know how to get paid and do it with as little headache as possible and do it with a bit of suave, you know, carry yourself the right way when actually getting paid. So on that note, I hope you guys enjoyed this module. I'll catch you next one.